There are moments in life when you feel as though everything has been designed to break you, not inconvenience you, not slow you down, but completely dismantle you. Your strength was tested first. You were pushed to the edge of your ability until you realized your ability was never enough on its own. Then your patience was tested. Time stretched longer than your faith felt comfortable with, and the waiting became heavier than the struggle itself. Then your obedience was tested. You were asked to move when it made no sense, to stay when every part of you wanted to run, to trust when logic failed you. And still you stood, still you breathed, still you believed. That was not weakness, that was training. God does not test everyone the same way, because not everyone is built for the same assignment. The intensity of your testing is always connected to the magnitude of what you are carrying. Small purposes do not require deep refining. Ordinary futures do not demand extraordinary pressure. But when God sees a vessel that can hold weight, that can carry responsibility, that can walk in authority without losing humility, the process becomes precise and relentless, not to destroy you, but to shape you, not to humiliate you, but to prepare you. You were not being punished. You were being positioned. There were 7 tests, and each one spoke to a different part of your soul. The first test was rejection. Doors closed without explanation. People you supported walked away. You were misunderstood, mislabeled, and dismissed, and God watched closely, not to see if you would be angry, but to see if you would remain anchored. Because those who cannot survive rejection cannot be trusted with influence. You passed that test when you chose integrity over resentment, silence over revenge, and growth over bitterness. The second test was delay. Time became your greatest adversary. You prayed and nothing moved. You worked and nothing shifted. You waited and the silence grew louder. Delay has a way of exposing motives. It reveals whether you want God's promise or God's timing. Many failed here because they confused delay with denial. But you stayed. You did not force doors. You did not manipulate outcomes. You learned that what arrives too early can destroy what is meant to bless you. You passed the test of delay when you learned to trust God even when the calendar argued against you. The third test was isolation. Suddenly, the crowd thinned. The voices faded. Support disappeared. This was not abandonment. This was separation. God often removes noise so that His direction becomes clear. In isolation, you are confronted with yourself. No audience, no validation, just truth. You learned how to stand without being seen, how to obey without being praised, how to remain faithful without being noticed. Those who cannot survive isolation will misuse attention when it comes. You passed because you learned to be full even when you were alone. The fourth test was contradiction. God spoke one thing, but reality showed you the opposite. You were promised growth, yet experienced loss. You are assured progress, yet faced setbacks. This is where many abandon faith because they expect the path to always agree with the promise. But you learn something deeper. You learn that God's word is not dependent on current conditions. You learn to walk by conviction, not by convenience. You passed when you chose to believe God over evidence. The fifth test was temptation. Not temptation to do evil, but temptation to settle, to accept less because you are tired, to choose comfort over calling, to compromise values for speed. You were offered shortcuts disguised as opportunities. You were given options that looked good but felt wrong, and you said no. Not because it was easy, but because your spirit had matured. You understood that everything permissible is not beneficial. You passed because you valued alignment over advancement. The sixth test was endurance. The fight lasted longer than expected. The battle repeated itself. The same mountain appeared again and again. You grew weary, but you did not quit. Endurance is not about strength. It is about decision. You decided to keep going even when motivation left. You decided to stand even when emotions collapsed. You learn that faith is not a feeling, it is a commitment. You passed because you refused to give up when quitting felt justified. The seventh test was surrender. This was the hardest of all. You had to release control, release expectations, release outcomes. You had to trust God not just with the beginning, but with the ending. You stopped telling God how to do it and started trusting Him to do it right. Surrender is not weakness. It is the highest form of faith. You passed when you placed everything in God's hands without conditions. All 7 tests were not meant to break you. They were meant to reveal you. And now only one remains. Not a test of survival, but a test of stewardship. Not a test of faith, but a test of responsibility. Because passing tests is one thing, but carrying what comes after is another. God does not promote based on desire. He promotes based on readiness. You may not see it yet, but something has shifted. The resistance you faced was not random. It was targeted. The pressure was not accidental. It was intentional. You were being weighed, measured, observed. God was watching how you responded when no one else was watching, how you spoke when you were hurt, how you acted when you were disappointed, how you trusted when you were afraid, and you qualified yourself without even knowing it. Do not underestimate what God is about to do through someone who has been stripped of ego, emptied of pride, and refined by waiting. You are not stepping into something new, you are stepping into something earned. Every tear paid for it. Every silent prayer contributed to it. Every moment you chose obedience over emotion unlocked it. Nothing was wasted. There will be people who will not recognize you in this next season. Not because you changed, but because you grew. You will carry authority without arrogance, confidence without noise, strength without intimidation. That is the mark of someone shaped by God, not by applause. When God elevates, He also stabilizes. When He increases influence, He deepens character. You are not rising to impress people. You are rising to fulfill purpose. Remember this, tests do not come to those who are weak, they come to those who are trusted. God does not invest this level of process into something He does not intend to use. You are not overlooked. You are being trained in secret. And what is trained in secret is revealed with power. Stay grounded, stay humble, stay aligned. The final test is not about proving yourself to others, but about remaining dependent on God even when you no longer have to struggle. Success has destroyed more callings than failure ever did. Never forget where your strength came from. Never forget who carried you when you could not carry yourself. Never forget that everything you are about to hold came from God's hand, not your own effort. You are still standing because God sustained you. You are still believing because God preserved you. You are still moving because God appointed you. The process is speaking now. The delay is making sense now. The pain is finding purpose now. You did not just pass tests, you were transformed by them. And transformation is always the doorway to destiny. Now understand this clearly. Passing tests does not mean the struggle immediately disappears. It means the struggle changes its language. Before, the pressure was external. Circumstances, people, delays, opposition. Now the pressure becomes internal. Discipline, consistency, obedience at a higher level. This is where many misunderstand God. They think graduation means rest, but graduation actually means responsibility. God never promotes someone into ease. God promotes someone into trust. And trust always requires vigilance of the heart. There is a season when God hides to protect you. And there is a season when God reveals you to use you. You are crossing from hiding into revealing. But revelation without grounding is dangerous. That is why God deepened your roots before He widened your reach. You learned to depend on God when nothing was visible, so that you would not abandon God when everything becomes visible. The unseen years trained you for the seen days. The silent nights prepared you for the spoken moments. You must recognize that God is not impressed by speed. God is impressed by alignment, Many run ahead and arrive early, only to discover they are alone and unprotected. You waited, and waiting aligned you with timing. Timing is not just about when something happens, it is about who you are when it happens. God waited until your heart could carry what your hands are about to hold. Because if the heart collapses, everything collapses. There is a difference between being chosen and being prepared. Many are chosen, but few endure preparation. You endured it. You stayed when it was uncomfortable. You learned obedience when it cost you. You learned restraint when reaction felt justified. You learned silence when explanation felt necessary. These are not common traits. These are marks of someone God is shaping for impact. What is coming will require wisdom beyond emotion. Influence without wisdom creates chaos. Opportunity without discernment leads to regret. God sharpened your discernment through disappointment. You learn not to trust appearances. You learn not to chase excitement. You learn to listen deeply, to pause before acting, to pray before deciding. That wisdom was not taught, it was forged. There were moments when you felt overlooked, but you were never forgotten. God never forgets those who remain faithful under pressure. Heaven records obedience even when earth ignores it. Every time you chose truth over convenience, it mattered. Every time you chose faith over fear, it mattered. Every time you chose patience over panic, it mattered. Nothing escapes God's awareness. You are entering a phase where others will benefit from the endurance you developed. People will draw strength from your stability. They will feel peace in your presence without knowing why. That is because God deposits authority quietly. True authority does not announce itself. It settles, it steadies, it brings order where confusion once ruled. That is the kind of authority you carry now. Not loud, not forced, but undeniable. Be careful not to shrink when expansion begins. Some people are comfortable only in survival mode. Prosperity, visibility, and favor can feel unfamiliar. Do not apologize for what God has done in you. Humility does not mean hiding. Humility means honoring God openly while remaining submitted internally. Walk forward without arrogance, but without hesitation. There will be new levels of accountability. God will require quicker obedience. Delayed obedience in earlier seasons was corrected gently. Now obedience must be immediate. Sensitivity becomes essential. Guard your spirit, protect your focus. Do not allow distraction to steal clarity. God speaks clearly to those who stay still enough to listen. Remember, elevation exposes. What was hidden in struggle becomes visible in success. That is why God purified your intentions earlier. Motives matter more than movements. God looks at the heartbeat before He blesses the hands. Continue to examine yourself. Continue to realign. Growth does not eliminate the need for self-awareness, it increases it. There is also this truth you must hold firmly. Not everyone who celebrates your rise understands your process. Some will misunderstand your boundaries. Some will question your decisions. Some will attempt to reconnect with access they once had. You must choose wisely. Not every door that opens should be entered. Not every voice that returns should be trusted. God removed people before. Do not bring them back prematurely. Your assignment now is stewardship of influence, of time, of clarity, of strength. Stewardship requires maturity. You cannot afford careless words or impulsive actions. You are representing something larger than personal desire. You are carrying evidence of what God can do with a surrendered life. That is not pressure, that is privilege. Do not fear the weight. You were trained for it. The same God who sustained you in lack will guide you in abundance. The same God who comforted you in silence will direct you in visibility. Dependence does not end when provision begins. Dependence deepens. Stay anchored in gratitude. Gratitude keeps success from becoming entitlement. Gratitude keeps blessing from becoming pride. Gratitude reminds you that everything you have is entrusted, not owned. When gratitude leads, wisdom follows. This is not the end of a journey, it is the beginning of a greater obedience. You are stepping into a space where faith must remain active, even when evidence supports you. That is higher faith, to trust God not because you are desperate, but because you are devoted. You were tested because, say, you were capable. You endured because you were called. You passed because God sustained you. And now, as the final test unfolds, remember this above all else: remain yielded, remain teachable, remain dependent, because those who stay close to God never lose direction, no matter how far they go. There is a sacred shift that happens when God moves you from being tested to being trusted. Tested people ask, will I survive? Trusted people asked, will I represent God well? This is the transition you are standing in now. Survival taught you endurance, but trust demands precision. God is not just shaping what you do, God is refining how you think, how you respond, how you choose when no one is correcting you. This is maturity, when obedience becomes instinct, not effort. You must understand that favor is not permission to relax standards. Favor is the call to higher standards. God does not surround you with blessing to distract you, but to see whether you can remain focused while blessed. Many fail here because they were trained to fight, but never trained to govern. You were trained for both. You learned how to stand under pressure, and now you are learning how to stand under provision. Both require discipline, but this one requires restraint. There is a quiet authority that God releases only after a person has learned to wait without complaining. That authority does not need to shout. It does not need validation. It does not compete. It rests. When you speak now, your words carry weight because they were formed in silence. When you move now, your steps carry direction because they were measured in uncertainty. This is what happens when God becomes your reference point instead of people's opinions. Do not confuse calmness with weakness. God has taught you composure. Emotional control is spiritual strength. Anyone can react, but only the refined can respond. In earlier seasons, reaction would have cost you. Now, response will protect you. God is entrusting you with situations that require wisdom more than power, patience more than speed, discernment more than explanation. This is evidence that God sees you as stable. There will be moments when God asks you to remain quiet even though you are right. Truth does not always need a defense, sometimes it needs time. God is teaching you to let outcomes speak louder than arguments. When God vindicates, it is complete. When people vindicate, it is temporary. Trust God with your name. Trust God with your reputation. Trust God with your legacy. God is far more invested in your future than you could ever be. You are also stepping into a season where generosity becomes a test of the heart. Not just generosity with resources, but generosity with grace, with patience, with understanding. Power without compassion creates distance. Authority without mercy creates fear. God balances your strength with humility so that what you carry heals instead of harms. Remember how you felt when you needed understanding. Let that memory guide your actions. There will be moments when you outgrow rooms you once prayed to enter. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. Growth requires transition. God will not allow you to remain where your capacity is underused. Do not stay out of loyalty when God is calling you forward. Loyalty to God must always come before loyalty to comfort. God is not removing you from places to isolate you, but to reposition you. Pay attention to how God sharpens your hearing now. Subtle nudges, quiet warnings, gentle redirections. Sensitivity is a gift you must protect. Noise dulls discernment. Overexposure weakens clarity. Make room for stillness. God speaks most clearly to those who are not rushing. Speed can impress people, but stillness positions you to hear God. Understand this deeply. The final test is not about proving worth. It is about maintaining alignment. And T, you no longer need to strive for approval. You need to stay submitted. Submission is not loss of control. It is alignment with wisdom greater than your own. God does not restrict to limit. God guides to protect. Every instruction is an invitation to safety, to longevity, to peace. There will be opportunities that look good but are not God. Learn to recognize the difference. God's opportunities bring peace even when they stretch you. Counterfeit opportunities bring excitement but steal rest. Do not confuse adrenaline with purpose. God's will strengthens you even when it challenges you. Trust the peace that accompanies obedience. As you move forward, remember that God values faithfulness more than visibility. Consistency matters. Private obedience sustains public impact. What you do when no one is watching will determine how long you last when everyone is watching. God is not just interested in lifting you. God is committed to keeping you. Let gratitude remain your language. Gratitude keeps your spirit soft. It keeps your heart teachable. It keeps your vision clear. When gratitude leads, pride cannot take root. When humility remains, growth continues. God resists self-exaltation but honors surrender. You are not shaped for a moment. You are shaped for endurance. What God has prepared for you is not fragile. It is lasting. It will outlive trends, opinions, and seasons. But only if you stay close to the source. Stay close to God when things are quiet. Stay close to God when things are loud. Stay close to God when things make sense. Stay close to God when they do not. This is the space where faith matures into trust, where prayers become alignment instead of request. S, where obedience becomes joy instead of effort. God is not finished with you. God is just beginning to reveal what was formed in the hidden place. There is a weight that comes with divine clarity, and you are beginning to feel it. When God sharpens vision, distraction becomes uncomfortable. What once entertained you now feels empty. What once satisfied you now feels insufficient. This is not loss, this is elevation. God is refining your appetite so that you no longer crave what cannot sustain where you are going. When God changes your desires, it is proof that transformation has reached the core, not just the surface. You are learning that strength is not loud confidence, but quiet assurance. God is teaching you to stand without needing to announce your standing. In earlier seasons, you needed reassurance because uncertainty surrounded you. Now, certainty is internal. God has settled something in you that circumstances can no longer shake. That settled place is not pride, it is conviction. Conviction rooted in God does not bend under pressure, and it does not inflate under praise. There will be moments when you must choose obedience over familiarity. Familiarity feels safe, but obedience carries purpose. God rarely reveals the full picture at once, not because God is withholding, but because trust must remain active. Step-by-step obedience keeps the heart dependent. God wants your confidence anchored in Him, not in information. Faith that sees everything does not grow. Faith that walks with God does. Pay attention to how God recalibrates your priorities. Efficiency will no longer impress you as much as integrity. Results will matter less than alignment. God is teaching in you that success without peace is failure in disguise. Peace is not the absence of challenge. It is the presence of God's order. When God is ordering your steps, even difficulty carries direction. You will notice that your prayers are changing. You are asking less for relief and more for wisdom, less for escape and more for understanding. This is growth. When prayer matures, it stops demanding and starts discerning. You are no longer trying to move God, you are allowing God to move you. That posture invites clarity, and clarity invites authority. God will entrust you with moments that require moral courage, situations where compromise would be easy and obedience would be costly. Remember, cost does not mean loss. What obedience costs temporarily, it protects eternally. God never asks you to give up something without guarding what matters more. Obedience is not sacrifice without return. It is investment into permanence. There will be times when God asks you to slow down, even as momentum increases. Speed without direction leads to burnout. God values longevity. What God establishes, God intends to sustain. Learn to pace yourself by God's rhythm, not by pressure. Rest is not laziness, it is wisdom. God rested not because God was tired, but to establish balance. Honor that pattern. You are also entering a phase where discernment must guide compassion. Helping without wisdom can drain purpose. Giving without direction can weaken assignment. God does not ask you to carry what was never assigned to you. Learn the difference between responsibility and rescue. God is the sustainer. You are the steward. That distinction will protect your strength. Your voice carries influence. See now, even when you are not speaking. Presence shaped by God speaks louder than words. People will sense stability. They will notice peace. They will observe consistency. This is not performance. This is fruit. Fruit does not strive to be seen. It grows, and visibility follows naturally. Let growth remain your focus. God will handle exposure. God against comparison. Comparison distracts from assignment. God never duplicates purpose. What God is doing through you cannot be replicated, just as what God is doing through others cannot be borrowed. Celebrate others without measuring yourself against them. Unity strengthens calling. Envy weakens vision. God's supply is not limited. There is room for obedience to be rewarded without rivalry. When opposition arises, and it will, do not internalize it. Resistance is often confirmation that you are moving correctly. Darkness reacts to clarity. Confusion reacts to order. Stay grounded. Do not fight every battle. Discern which moments require response and which require silence. God fights most effectively when you stay aligned rather than reactive. This season will require emotional discipline. Feelings will fluctuate, but commitment must remain steady. God is training you to let truth lead emotion, not the other way around. Emotional maturity is spiritual maturity. When you can feel deeply without being controlled, you are walking in strength. Remember that humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of God more. When God remains central, ego loses its grip. Pride dissolves when gratitude stays active. Keep acknowledging the source. Keep honoring the giver. Keep remembering the journey. Memory preserves humility. What lies ahead will demand consistency more than intensity. Passion ignites, but discipline sustains. God is not calling you to occasional brilliance, but to daily faithfulness. Faithfulness builds legacy quietly. It does not rush. It does not force. It remains. Stay attentive, stay surrendered, stay responsive. God is still speaking, still guiding, still shaping. And as long as you remain yielded, every step forward will remain covered, every decision will remain guarded, and every season will continue to unfold according to God's purpose. There will come moments when clarity feels heavier than confusion ever was. Confusion allows excuses. Clarity demands action. Now that God has made direction plain, hesitation becomes disobedience. This is where courage is required, not the courage to start, but the courage to continue with precision. God is not asking you to be dramatic. God is asking you to be exact. Exact obedience releases exact results. Partial obedience delays fulfillment. You are discovering that faith at this level is no longer about believing God can do something, but trusting God's judgment in how it should be done. Trust matures when you stop negotiating outcomes and start honoring instructions. God's wisdom often contradicts urgency. What feels slow to you is often protection in motion. God moves with intention, not impulse. There will be times when God asks you to choose principle over popularity. Influence tests integrity. Applause can tempt alignment to drift. Stay anchored. God did not shape you to blend in. God shaped you to stand firm. Standing firm will sometimes cost approval, but it will always secure peace. Peace is the currency of alignment. You may notice that God is reducing your tolerance for disorder. What once seemed acceptable now feels disruptive. This is discernment sharpening. God is training your spirit to recognize what does not belong. Do not ignore that inner resistance. It is not negativity, it is guidance. When God refines standards, it is because the environment around you is changing. Your resilience will now be tested in subtler ways, not through obvious hardship, but through sustained responsibility. Carrying consistency requires strength of character. Showing up when there is no crisis requires discipline. God is watching how you manage stability. Stability reveals character more accurately than struggle ever did. You will be tempted to explain yourself when misunderstood. Resist that urge. Explanation often seeks validation. Alignment does not need defense. God is capable of clarifying what He initiated. Let time and fruit speak. Fruit always tells the truth. Words can be debated, fruit cannot. God is also teaching you restraint with access. Not everyone deserves proximity. Proximity influences direction. God who speaks into you, God who walks beside you, God who has permission to influence your decisions. This is not isolation. This is stewardship of purpose. God assigns seasons and relationships intentionally. Respect the boundaries. God sets. There will be opportunities to revisit old chapters. Nostalgia can disguise regression. Honor the past without returning to it. God does not advance you by moving backward. Gratitude does not require re-entry. Some doors were closed because what you carried outgrew what was inside. You are entering a phase where prayer becomes partnership. You are no longer asking God to fix what you can avoid through obedience. Wisdom is replacing rescue. This is growth. God prefers to guide rather than repair. When you listen early, correction becomes unnecessary. Expect refinement in your speech. Words shape atmosphere. God is teaching you that what you say carries consequence. Speak with intention. Speak with restraint. Speak with truth. Silence is sometimes the most powerful declaration of confidence. Those who know who they are do not rush to prove it. You will also sense an increasing call to accountability. God is surrounding you with mirrors, not fans. Mirrors reveal truth. Fans inflate ego. Receive correction with humility. Correction is not rejection, it is investment. God corrects what God values. As responsibility expands, remember that capacity grows through consistency, not pressure. Do not overload yourself to prove strength. Strength is shown by sustainability. God is building something that lasts beyond enthusiasm. Pace yourself with wisdom. Longevity honors God. You will encounter moments when your faith is tested not by adversity, but by comfort. Comfort can dull urgency. Guard your hunger. Stay teachable. Remain curious. God continues to reveal deeper layers to those who keep seeking, even when life feels settled. There's also this truth: obedience will sometimes require choosing what is right over what is rewarding. Immediate reward can be deceptive. God's rewards are layered, enduring, and complete. Trust God's accounting. Nothing done in obedience goes unnoticed. Your inner life now matters more than external achievement. God is shaping the unseen to sustain the seen. Protect your private discipline. What you cultivate in secret will determine how you handle visibility. Public strength is always built in private surrender. Do not rush the unfolding. God is intentional with sequence. Sequence protects purpose. When things arrive in the right order, they stay. When they arrive out of order, they strain. Trust the process, trust the pacing, trust the wisdom behind the waiting. You are not walking alone. God's presence is not seasonal, it is constant. Awareness of that presence is what shifts. Stay aware, stay responsive, stay humble. As long as God remains the source, direction will remain clear, strength will remain sufficient, and purpose will continue to unfold with precision and peace.